Hi there, and welcome to my Brain Health Kitchen. I'm Diana Liz, and today I am cooking 3-day dirty rice. And I have been, this rice, this was a cup of rice 3 days ago. And today I'm going to come around and see if I can get closer to the camera. Today it has little tiny tails, and these are roots, and it sprouted. So how I did this is a mason jar, and I put in a cup of rice, and I covered it with water and put it on the counter overnight. In the morning, I drained it and rinsed it. And this is really important that I try and rinse it 3 times a day, in the morning, at noon, and in the evening, or at least in the morning and in the evening. And I rinse it 2 or 3 times until the water starts to come out fairly clean, because you can see some yucky stuff in there. And I keep it down in a drawer on the bottom where it's in the dark. And today is day 3, so I soaked it for 1 day, and 2 days I rinsed it, and for a total of 3 days. And the advantage of this, why do I go through all this trouble? Well, it's much easier to digest. The time that I take in rinsing it out is paid off in cooking time, and it will only take about 15 minutes for the rice to be done, or maybe even less. I'll time it today and let you know. And that's good. But what's really important is GABA. And GABA is a neurotransmitter that helps our temporal lobes. That's right here. And, you know, some of us have issues with temporal lobes. I have an auditory hearing delay. I also have trouble with short-term memory that I discovered in a QEEG test, and I now work in a clinic doing those tests, and I get a lot of time looking at brains, and so the temporal lobes are really important, and taking care of them. Also, if you have it in the evening, GABA helps you sleep, because it's relaxing to the body and to the brain. So I highly recommend, nutritious. This is brown rice. I never cook white rice. You cannot sprout white rice, because the cover has been removed from it, and so have nutrients. So 3-day dirty Cajun rice. And another thing that I'm using is this. It's called ground bison ancestral blend, and it has liver and heart in it. It's grass-fed. Now, this is 23 grams. It's 14 ounces, and it's just Paul and I in this who eat what I cook. So I'm going to be cutting it in half. And I'm going to be using half tonight, and I'll be using half tomorrow night. And I will make 4 servings with what's left over. When we're eating a nutrient-dense food, and liver and heart and bison are nutrient-dense food, we don't need a lot of it. What we need is mainly a plate full of vegetables and leafy greens, and very small servings, like a condiment of proteins like ancestral beef and the smashed fish that I talk about. So I've gone through a number of recipes, because I'm not a chef, and so I don't create recipes. I take recipes that I find online, and I study them, and I condense them and come up with what's best for my family, and Paul and I, and also my grandson and my daughter and my grandson-in-law. So one of the things that I found was garlic powder. I never use garlic powder. It's a refined substance. What are refined substances? Well, cocaine and heroin and sugar. and they assault the brain. So no garlic powder. Also, onion powder, same thing. It assaults the brain, and a brain health diet does not include onion powder. We use onions and we use garlic. This used white rice, and too many of the nutrients are removed when we remove the husk off the little seeds. And so in order to sprout it and to make it easier to digest, and also easier for the nutrients to be absorbed, that's really important, and that's why we go through the trouble. So one last thing, bison and beef and liver and heart are superfoods, especially when you combine them together. Now, if you don't like the taste of liver and heart, when you make the ancestral blend, you're going to be tasting the spices, which it has a cayenne pepper and it has paprika. And so this will make it easier to tolerate if you don't like the flavor. You can kind of camouflage it and get around it. And you know, today we take a lot of vitamins, and one of the reasons that we need a lot of vitamins is because the nutrition has been taken out. You know, when we don't eat heart and we don't eat liver, we are missing out on some very potent nutrients. So some of the things that that we get from bison and the heart and the liver is B12. And if you are MTHFR, pay attention. This is important for you because you can get B12, you can get 3,460 of the recommended vitamins with just one serving, one small serving of beef, liver, and heart. So it is, and you might say, well, it's expensive. Well, but we're eating a smaller portion so you can make more servings with it and get bang for your dollar. So just what I want to mention, B12, vitamin A, it has 1,000, from 800 to 1,000% RDI, riboflavin, B2, folate, those of you with MTHFR, 65% of your daily requirement, iron, copper, 1,260%, and choline is really important, especially for women. So, and it helps lower cholesterol and it helps with heart health. So what could be better? Well, I'm going to start off by browning for 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll be back with you. Now repeat after me. I will never, never cook with olive oil. And I will add olive oil after the food is over, but heating it begins to destroy the polyphenols. And that's the reason why we eat it. So I'm going to be cooking with avocado oil, and I sometimes cook with coconut oil. I try not to use ghee, but I will on occasions, very special occasions. And the other thing is no Teflon. We want, this is stainless steel. It is not the same. It is, you have to work with the stainless steel, and you have to pay attention because everything sticks to the bottom, but no toxins. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I have leeks and mushrooms and carrots and onions and a little fennel, because fennel is a superfood and it adds tons and tons of vitamin C. Even though it doesn't look like a citrus fruit, it has tons of vitamin C, and it also has molybdenum that is very important and that most Americans are deficient in. So I'm adding the vegetables. And I will stir this and I will measure. Now the recipe calls for half a teaspoon of cayenne. That is just not going to work for me. The most that I usually use is a fourth, and usually less than a fourth of a teaspoon, maybe even an eighth. So you add a little bit and taste it and see what works for you. And then paprika is just tasty, so add as much as you like. So I'm going to crush the garlic so that I can add them, and I will be back in a minute. The vegetables have softened, and now for cook the beef for 4 minutes and cook the vegetables another 4 minutes. And now I'm adding the rice, and then I will be adding the seasoning. And then I'm going to stir. And now we're going to make it dirty. Here we go. And before I add some liquid, I'm going to mash and chop some garlic. I don't like to overcook the garlic. I don't like to brown it and burn it. It doesn't taste good. And the fiber in the garlic is really important as well. And when we use garlic powder, we remove the fiber, and we have to remember that we don't eat for ourselves. We eat for ourselves and the trillions of organisms that live in and on our body that create our health. And we didn't know about this. We started the research just recently in 2008. In terms of research, it's pretty recent. And every day we learn more and more how important these micronutrients are, and microbes in our body are, and how they create a health. So I've chopped the garlic and I'm adding it. And normally I would add 2 cups, or maybe even 2 cups and a little bit more for brown rice. But because it's soaked, I'm only going to add 1 cup of liquid. And I sometimes create my own broth, cooking the meat ahead of time. This shortens the recipe time, but I didn't do that today. So I'm going to, and I do not use bouillon cubes because they have an effect on me. I think it's the things that are added to the bouillon that act as excitotoxins in my brain. And when I eat a bouillon cube, I cannot sleep. So if you have children who are have ADD or autism, or if you are struggling with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's or any other brain condition, even depression and anxiety, I do not advise that you eat anything that's got excitotoxins in it. So, okay, so I'm going to add some broth, cover it, and check it after 10 minutes. While I'm waiting for the last 2 minutes for the rice to cook, I'd like to talk about this incredible book written by Dr. Catherine Shanahan. She is a biochemist, a geneticist, and a medical doctor. And her book is entitled Deep Nutrition. And one of the practices that she advocates for in the book is cooking slow on the bone. And I have a crock pot over there that's that I use very frequently. And I think my recipe, I tasted it just a minute ago, would have been tastier if I had cooked the meat slowly in the crock pot and used the broth to make the dish. But I'll be more efficient and more prepared in the future. That's the timer, and I'm going to serve it up. Unfortunately, it's just me here in the kitchen, and I don't have a cameraman, but this is absolutely delicious. It's got carrots and celery, and bell peppers and onions and leeks, and the quarter of a teaspoon that I placed in of cayenne pepper is really warm. You may want to start with 1/8 of a teaspoon and then see if you want to add any additional. This is okay I would say it's probably in a Thai restaurant, a two. And it's not super hot, but it is warm and it is very tasty. So bon appetit for a brighter brain. B12 in the beef and the folate and iron and copper in the bison and in the heart and in the liver. The little tiny bit of um, of, um, gosh, this is why I do the show, is because I have issues with my brain. Let me see, fennel. So the little tiny bit of fennel just sort of disappears into the salad, into the spices, and leaves its nutrition. So bon appetit for a brighter brain. If you are able to sleep better after you've had this recipe or after you've consumed rice, 3-day rice, please let me know. There are lots of videos on how to sprout rice, and we do not sprout it for 5 days. We only sprout it for 3, or there are changes that we don't want, either tasting and it just 3 days is what we do. So bon appetit for a brighter brain, and I'll see you in the next recipe.